Hello, my lovely kids. You are welcome again to another Cafdil Science Lessons. My name is Ernest Atto Benter. Kids, in our previous lesson, we looked at reproduction. And I believe you enjoyed that lesson on reproduction. Today, we are still going to talk about reproduction. In that lesson, we said that when God created all the living things and the non-living things, He commanded the living things to be fruitful and multiply. And the name we give to the process of being fruitful and multiplying is called reproduction. And we learned that there are two means of reproduction. Either animals are given birth to or they are hatched from an egg. So in the last lesson, we looked at reproduction through giving birth. Today, we are going to look at the other form of reproduction. So, my kids, the lesson for today is on reproduction through hatching. So, we are finished with the giving birth. We are going to the hatching. Before we begin the lesson, let's mark the homework I gave to you the last time. 1. Explain reproduction. Reproduction is the process of producing young ones that look like the parents. Reproduction is the process of producing young ones that look like the parents. And then to mention 3 examples of animals that reproduce live young ones through giving birth. Mention 3 examples of animals that reproduce live young ones through giving birth. So we have 1 goat, 2 cats, 3 sheep, and then 4 dog. And if you remember, in that lesson, we saw how all these animals give birth to their live young ones. 3. State the baby names of the following animals. So the first one is cat. So the baby cat is called a kitten. 2, mouse. A baby mouse is called a pup. And then 3, the baby goat is called kid. Kids, I believe you all had the answers right. I believe in you. And I believe you all had the answers right. You have done well. Good. Now let's move to today's topic on reproduction through hatching. As you always do, at the end of the lesson, if you all go through this lesson, you'll be able to explain what reproduction is. Explain hatching in reproduction. And then state 3 examples of living things that reproduce young ones through hatching from eggs. State 3 examples of living things that reproduce young ones through hatching from eggs. So let's all pay attention and look at the wonders of God, how new living things, that is animals, are created from eggs. Let's begin by refreshing our minds on what reproduction is. Kids, when animals produce young ones, we say it is reproduction. And remember that the young ones always look like their parents. So if you look at the hen here, this hen has 3 chicks. This cat has 1 kitten. In reproduction, there is no way a cat will give or produce chicks, and there is no way a hen will produce a kitten. The young ones always look like their parents. And that is reproduction. You were also giving birth to. Somebody will see you, hey, you resemble your dad, you resemble your mom. because they give birth to you and you look like your parents. You look like your parents. So that is reproduction. When animals produce young ones, we say it is reproduction, and the young ones look like their parents. Good. We also said that some living things reproduce their young ones alive by giving birth to them, like how you see the giraffe giving birth, and we did that in the previous lesson. Others also reproduce their young ones by laying eggs, and the young ones are hatched from the eggs. So in today's lesson, we are going to look at reproduction of young ones through the hatching of eggs. So as we said, there are two ways animals reproduce. Either they are giving birth to, or you are hatched from an egg. And the last lesson we looked at giving birth. Today we are going to look at the hatching from eggs. Reproduction through hatching. Hatching means that the young ones came from an egg, like this one. Hatching means the young one came from an egg. Good. Hatching in reproduction means producing young ones from eggs. Hatching in reproduction means producing young ones from eggs. So this chick you see here came from an egg, as well as this. They all came from eggs, and that is what we call hatching. So hatching means coming from an egg, a young one coming from an egg. Good. Animals like birds, insects, reptiles, amphibians produce their young ones through hatching. We have learned all about birds, insects, reptiles, and amphibians. Right now we are going to learn how they produce young ones. So in this lesson we are going to look at birds and reptiles, how birds and reptiles give birth through hatching of their own eggs. In the next lesson we will look at insects and amphibians. So this lesson we are going to look at how birds and reptiles give birth through hatching, or produce through hatching. How they produce through hatching. Animals that reproduce through hatching begin by laying their eggs first. Because they come from egg, the young ones come from eggs. The egg must be laid first. So animals that produce through hatching begin by laying their eggs first. After laying the egg, they hatch their young ones from the egg. So that is the process. The first process, they lay the eggs first. In reproduction by giving birth, the first process, they get pregnant first, and the babies will be in their womb and it will mature before coming out. And when it comes to the hatching, they lay the eggs first, and then after the egg is laid, hatching takes place after providing some warmth to the eggs. So remember that animals that reproduce through hatching begin by laying eggs first. Without the egg, where would the young one come from? So they begin by laying the egg first, and then after that they produce the young ones from the eggs. Let's begin by reproduction in birds. So as we said, the first step is laying the eggs first. So we are looking at how birds, example hen, duck, and then ostrich, lay eggs. So the hen has laid an egg. We are now looking at a duck. A duck too is laying an egg. That is the first process taken by animals that reproduce through hatching. They lay their eggs first. We saw a hen laying an egg, and right now is the duck laying an egg. Struggling there. The duck is laying an egg. Yes, the duck has finished laying its egg. It has finished. Good. Now let's look at the ostrich. Ostrich, the biggest bird. When we treated bird, we said the ostrich is the biggest bird. The ostrich too is laying an egg. So as we said, that is the first process they go through. They lay their eggs first. They lay their eggs first. And look at the size of an ostrich egg. Very big. Very big. Very big. So that is the first process. They lay the egg first. They lay the egg first. So after laying the egg, what happens again? Is it that the egg will be there and young one will start coming from the eggs, or what will happen? Let's look at that. After laying the eggs, birds need to sit on their eggs to keep them warm. After laying the eggs, birds need to sit on their eggs to keep them warm. That is, to keep the eggs warm. This process of sitting on the egg and keeping them warm, we call it incubation. Incubation. When we're giving birth, we said at the time animals spend, that is the fetus spend in the mother's womb, is called gestation period. That is the time it takes the baby to grow and mature in the mother's womb before coming out. We call it gestation period. But when it comes to animals that reproduce by hatching, through hatching, they sit on the egg to keep the egg warm. And that process is called incubation. So you see the hen here, after laying, they will sit on the egg to keep it warm. And the warming process develops the young ones in the egg. The warming process develops the young ones in the egg. So there's a duck too. We saw the duck too laying an egg. After that, they sit on the egg to keep them warm. And the warming process helps the young ones to develop in the egg. So let's look at an example. The heat from the parent bird makes sure the chicks inside develop properly. So this is an egg of a hen. Let's look at day 3. What happens to the egg as they sit on the egg? Day 4. This is what happens to the egg. Day 5. It takes the hen 21 days to hatch an egg. Day 7. All the veins of the young chick, or the chick, is developing. We are on day 10. So this is what happens to the egg. So let's watch it closely. What happens to the egg as they sit on the egg? The heat helps in the formation of the chicks. So see, day 14. Wow, day 15. I can see the beak and the head. Day 17. 18. They take 21 days, so almost done. 19. And the 20th day, they start to come out. Yes, the chick is coming out. Isn't God wonderful? They just sit on the egg, apply some warmth to the egg, and look at what happens to the egg. Yes. Let's watch it again. Day 1. Day 2. So that means that if a hen is on some eggs, after some number of days you can't eat the eggs again, because it will start forming new ones. So this is day 6. The veins are coming. Day 7. You can see the blood veins. Day 8. Day 9. And it takes 21 days for a hen to hatch an egg. Day 11. This is what happens to the egg whilst they sit on the egg. Day 12. The formation of the chick in the egg. Day 14. So I left with 1 week. day 15, I can see the head and the beak. Day 16, day 17, day 18, or day 19. Oh, the hen is done. Day 20, and the 21st day they come out of the egg. Isn't that wonderful? So this is what happens. And all from day 1 to day 20, that is what we call incubation. From day 1 to day 20, that is what we call incubation. And day 21, they come out of the egg. They come out of. So any yolk you eat, this is the yolk. Any yolk you eat is what forms the chicks inside the egg. It's an integral part, most important part in the formation of the chicks. Good. So the heat from the parent bird makes sure that the chicks inside develop properly. Now let's move to reproduction in reptiles. We have seen birds, they lay eggs, they sit on the eggs, and as they sit on the eggs, the babies are formed in the eggs, and after the incubation period they come out of the egg. Now let's look at reptiles. We have learned about reptiles, animals that crawls. Let's look at how they also reproduce. They also start by laying egg, because that is the first stage. So let's look at how a lizard lay eggs. And children, let's compare something here. When the birds were giving or laying eggs, or when they were laying eggs, they lay the eggs open and then they sit on it. But look at the reptiles. They will dig a hole, and then after laying the eggs inside the hole, they will cover the hole. Why? We saw that the birds, after laying their eggs, they sit on the eggs, but this lizard laid the eggs inside the hole and then covered it. See, they are covering the hole. So without sitting on the eggs, how would the eggs hatch? We will come to that. Let's look at this turtle. Turtle live in the sea, and tortoise live on land. Turtle, they have flippers that help them to swim in the sea. So the turtle is using its flippers. The turtle is also digging a hole, just like the lizard. Why do they like holes? Digging holes and then burying the eggs. So the turtle is laying eggs. They can lay plenty eggs. We saw that the birds, they lay egg one at a time, but they lay plenty eggs at a time. So the turtle is also laying eggs inside the hole it created. Now, children, they lay their eggs in a hole because they cannot sit on the eggs. And the eggs need some amount of heat, that is some warmth, to form the babies. So when they lay in holes and cover it, the heat in the ground will help the eggs to hatch. That is the reason why they lay in holes. And because they will not be around to protect the eggs too. You saw the crabs there, they can destroy the eggs. So they lay in hole, cover it so that the heat in the ground will help the egg to hatch. So there is a crocodile also laying eggs, a crocodile. Let's look at a tortoise. We saw the turtle that lives in the sea. They will even come out from the sea, lay eggs on land and then go back. But the turtle, they are also digging holes. So all these animals, they are sensible. They know what they are doing. So they are the tortoise also, and then the tortoise also start laying eggs. And they lay plenty eggs at a time, just like the turtle. because they cannot sit on the eggs for it to hatch, they dig a hole, lay the eggs inside, and then when they finish, they will bury the eggs. So the heat in the ground will hatch the eggs. But when it comes to birds, they have to provide the heat by sitting on it. But these reptiles, they lay their eggs in holes and then they cover it so that the heat in the ground will hatch the eggs. So we have seen tortoise. Snakes also lay eggs. When we were treating the first lesson, you saw that some snakes give birth. They get pregnant and they give birth. Majority of snakes also lay eggs, and these are snakes laying eggs. Where they are laying the eggs from is called a cloaca. Where they are laying the eggs from is called the cloaca. So they are laying eggs. And not all snakes lay eggs through their cloaca. Not all of them. You will see another snake laying eggs through the mouth. Have you seen one before? A snake laying egg through the mouth. Yes, not all of them lay eggs through their cloaca. Some also lay eggs through their mouth, and we will look at that. Just look at this one. This snake is also laying eggs, but this time not through the end but through the mouth. So let's watch. Yes, laying eggs through the mouth. This cobra laying eggs through the mouth. They lay more eggs at a time. This is number 2. So you can see the eggs here. Viewers, can you see the eggs here? You can see the eggs here. They are coming. They are all coming. One by one. You can see the eggs. This is the 3rd one. This is the 4th one. 5th one. 6th. Yes. So not all snakes lay eggs through their cloaca. Some also lay eggs through their mouth. This is a chameleon. When we watched the first lesson, you saw that some chameleons give birth. They also get pregnant and give birth. We call them, that chameleon, a Jackson chameleon. But when you take this chameleon, they lay eggs. So you see that they all dig holes. And then they lay their eggs inside that hole. So it has finished digging the hole and now laying the egg. So this is a chameleon laying an egg. So viewers or my children, remember that the first process in hatching is laying the egg. The second process is providing heat to the eggs, and the third one is hatching. So these animals lay eggs in holes, and the second part, they cover it so that the heat in the ground will help hatch the young ones. Now let's look at the hatching. We looked at the reptiles laying egg. Let's look at the hatching. So this is a crocodile. You saw the crocodile laying eggs. But one thing about crocodiles is that when they lay their eggs, from time to time they come to the place they lay the eggs to see what is happening. So they always know when their eggs will hatch. Sometimes they leave a guard there, another crocodile there, to guard the eggs. So they know when. So you see that the eggs that were laid have started hatching. See. And we call them hatchlings. Crocodile young ones, we call them hatchlings. So they are coming from the egg. You see, because they buried the egg, they are coming from the ground because they buried it. God is wonderful. Look at how just burying an egg, another creature has come from it. They are all coming from the ground because the eggs were buried. And when they finish, because crocodiles spent some of their time in the waters and some on land, they will carry their young ones in their snout, that is their mouth, and go and drop them in the water. So let's watch it. So more eggs are hatching. More eggs are hatching. What's on my kalo? Yes, also I'm around. Yes, I have arrived. Yes. And in reptiles, we talked about the difference between alligator and crocodiles. As for crocodiles, when they close their snout, you still see their teeth. So you see that the crocodile is carrying the hatchlings in its mouth. See, it is not eating them. It is just carrying the young ones that hatched to the water, because that is where they spend most of their life. So it is not eating the young ones. It is just carrying them. Yes. And then you go and bath them in the water and then teach them how to survive in the water also. So the eggs has finished hatching and the mother is carrying them into the water. So just see. Then it will open its mouth for the young ones to come out. So you see. Yes. You see. Let's look at the tortoise eggs too. We saw the tortoise burying the eggs, and this is the eggs too are hatching. So this is tortoise egg hatching. They are all coming from eggs, and this is what we call hatching. Human beings, we were giving birth to. We are not hatched from eggs. We don't lay eggs. Human beings, you don't lay eggs. But some animals reproduce through hatching. They lay eggs and the young ones come from the egg. And the example is the tortoise you see on your screen. Let's see the turtle that came from the sea, dug a hole at the seashore and then laid the eggs and buried it. Look at the young ones coming out from the sand. See, the turtle laid plenty eggs and they are all coming out. See, they are all coming out. God is wonderful, isn't it? They bury the eggs and then they get some amount of heat and then the young ones will be hatched from the egg. Because their mother is in the sea, look at the direction they will all go. When they are hatched, they don't go back to the land. They rather go towards the sea, because that is where they live. Even the young ones knows that this is not my home. I came here so that I can be born. Then they all direct their direction. Or plenty. A newborn turtle, and they are all finding their way into the sea. That is wonderful. They could have stayed on land, but that is not where they belong to. So they start marching into the sea. That is where their mom is. See, yes, the water is taking the young turtle to mommy. So they are also hatched. Let's look at snakes. You also saw the snakes laying eggs, and the eggs are hatching. Let's look at it. So these are snake eggs, and it is also hatching. So reptiles do not sit on their eggs. They do not. They bury the eggs, and the heat in the ground will help the eggs to hatch. So a snake too coming from the egg. This long snake coming from the egg. So this is what we call hatching. Hatching. Yes. Hatching. So when you talk about reproduction in animals, either you were given birth to or you were hatched from an egg. You were hatched from an egg. This long snake coming from the egg. And you saw how the birds even develop in the egg. So nice. Within 21 days. Let's see the chameleon too. You saw the chameleon laying eggs, and then the chameleon too is coming from the egg, and young ones coming from the egg. That is what we call hatching. Young one coming from the eggs. That is what we call hatching. Yes. So they all lay eggs, provide some heat, and with their heat they bury the eggs so that the ground will provide heat to the eggs for it to hatch. They can't sit on the eggs to hatch. They can't sit on. So there's a chameleon. They are very slow. There's a chameleon hatching from an egg. Yes. Yes. So this is what you call hatching. Hatching. Yes. So a newborn chameleon from an egg. Good. So Kate, you have seen examples of reptiles and how they also hatch their young ones from eggs. Good. We are almost at the end of the lesson, and we looked at hatching as another way of reproducing young ones from eggs. So hatching in reproduction means producing young ones from eggs. And we saw various animals, the birds and then the reptiles, hatching their young ones from eggs. So animals like birds and reptiles produce their young ones through hatching. Good. So you see the crocodile and then the turtle coming from eggs, and that is what you call hatching. Good. Now let's test ourselves. I believe you watched all the videos and you understand what hatching is. So let's test ourselves. 1. Producing young ones from eggs is called giving birth, laying eggs, hatching. Giving birth, laying, that is eggs, and hatching. Producing young ones from eggs is called good. Hatching. Good. 2. After laying the eggs, birds need to sit on their eggs to keep them warm. This is called, after laying the eggs, birds need to sit like this on their eggs to keep them warm. This is called incubation, gestation, pregnancy. Incubation, gestation, pregnancy. So the time the birds sit on their eggs until new ones are hatched from it is called what? Great. Incubation. Incubation. Those who give birth, we call it gestation. If you get pregnant before giving birth, that process that the young baby is, or the baby is in the womb, is called gestation until it matures. But when it comes to those animals that hatch from eggs, we call it incubation, the process of providing heat or warmth to the eggs. Good. So which of the following animals hatch their young ones from eggs? Which of the following animals hatch their young ones from eggs? So we have dog, we have duck, we have cats. Good. The answer is duck. The answer is duck. Good. It's a bird. That is duck. The baby of a hen is called. The baby of a hen is called. We have cage, we have chick, we have pup. This chick or this baby is called what? Good. It's called chick. It's called chick. So the baby of a hen is called chick. And then eggs coming out of birds is called. Eggs coming out of birds is called. We have giving birth, laying, and then hatching. Eggs coming out of birds is called giving birth, laying, hatching. Great. Laying. Yes. So birds lay eggs. Kate, you have all done well. You have all done well. You have all done well. I believe we enjoyed the lesson. Now before we leave, let's take this assignment. 1. What is hatching in reproduction? What is hatching in reproduction? And then 2. State 3 examples of animals that reproduce young ones through hatching from eggs. State 3 examples of animals that reproduce young ones through hatching from eggs. I'll give you some few minutes to put this assignment down. Take your pen and book and then put this assignment down. So 1, what is hatching in reproduction? What is hatching in reproduction? And then 2, state 3 examples of animals that reproduce young ones through hatching from eggs. You watched the video, so you saw all the animals hatching from eggs. Animals that lay eggs and then their young ones are hatched from eggs. Make sure you put the assignment down and then you do it. My lovely kids, you are welcome back. I believe you were able to put down the assignments in your books. Today we looked at reproduction and about animals that lay eggs and then their young ones come from the eggs, and we call this hatching. So today's lesson was on reproduction through hatching. I believe you enjoyed the lesson, and as I always advise you, anytime you take a lesson, make sure you learn something new. And I believe by watching this lesson, you have watched something new today. Add it to what you already know. As I said, I hope you enjoyed the lesson. And until I come your way again with another interesting science lesson. This is your teacher, Ernest Atubento. Bye bye.